My name is Amy Marks. I hope you do listen to the podcast. It is a kind of an interesting story, not, again, a self-given name, but I do cherish the name Queen of Prefab. A little bit about me. I was a vice president and senior leadership team at Autodesk for 4 years, but they recruited me. I always say I'm very wet and dirty from the industry. So I own several construction companies, including one of the oldest prefabrication companies in the United States. When I bought it, it was 75 years old. And lots of different things about me. I do about 40 keynotes a year, but that's not my day job. So I have an actual day job. So you set me up perfectly because I like to talk about change. And if you watch any talk that I give, I start out with Dan Miller's formula for change every time. And it's not that no one wants to change. It's just that you need certain things in place in order to change. And so it's formulaic, actually. And so the first thing you need for change is dissatisfaction. If everybody is happy and sitting in their backyard like you showed in the summertime, nobody actually changes at all. So you don't have to be miserable, but you have to either be miserable or you have to be aspirational, that you can't reach something that you want to get to. And then after you have that dissatisfaction, you have to have a vision. So for those of you who have been to anything at Autodesk, Olivia and I used to work there, they're great at painting vision. We've seen a lot of vision yesterday in our last keynote. We talked a lot about what will things look like in 25 years. I know Amy talked about that. So I feel like we're not short on vision at all in our ecosystem. I hear about vision every single day. An army of robot dogs is coming. I'm like, okay, when's the first dog coming to live in my house? And then the part where everybody falls down is you have to have some first concrete steps of action. So we go to these conferences and we get it really inspired, and then we come back and then nothing happens. And I always remind people, if you take one thing away from the conference to act on, you'll be that much further ahead, because you always fall down on those first concrete steps of action. And all of this has to be greater than resistance. And so I'm an equal opportunity offender, I would say. I offend lots of different groups. It's because I'm from New York and a rugby player. If you don't know that about me, I was a 15-year competitive rugby player. It has to be greater than something called resistance, but we always point to everybody outside. We're like, oh, if the owner only asked for that. I'm on the owner's side now. I'll be asking for it. So if the owner asked for it, if the architect only drew it, if the subcontractor, if the GC just told me to do it, it would happen. Resistance mostly comes from internal. It's mostly from your own company or within yourself. So if you want to change and you want others to change, first ask them if they're unhappy. That's the number one thing I would tell all my friends. And very quickly, we all know about these workforce challenges. Everybody is retiring. I'm 53. I'm not sad about my age. I know that at 55, I will not be retiring. But most are retiring. And we realize that we're not bringing people to the space. And so in the United States, we have 3% women in the trades. 3%. For those of you who don't know, we're 51% of the population. 3% women in trades. We make good living in the trades, and somehow we're not getting women there. And I would tell you that we should probably stop calling it the Brotherhood of the Iron Workers, or the Brotherhood of the Electrical Workers, or the Fellowship if you're in other countries. So when they go to my daughter's high school, who's 16, also a rugby player, she does not think she should go to the table of the Iron Workers because it says the Brotherhood of the Iron Workers welcomes you. And she's like, I'm not part of the brotherhood. So we know we have these critical skills issues and gaps, right? We have to figure out how we're going to codify some of the knowledge that we have in our minds. Hopefully you'll talk about that next with some of our entrepreneurial things that are going on. But here's what's worse. Maybe. Technology is worse. Someone's going to have to advance my... Here we go. Here's what's worse. About 41% of every construction project ends up in transactional waste. What does that mean? It means meetings on meetings on meetings on meetings. Your money, 41% of that is going towards transactional waste. After that, all the materials that you buy, 40% of those, 30 to 40% depending on the job, end up in the garbage. How many of you, raise your hand, are dissatisfied now that I said that? We're like trading in blood diamonds. Like if you, please, like raise your hand. We're in construction slavery at this point. Like if you're not unhappy, that should make you very unhappy. And so we realize on top of that, everybody's talking about data. We are a $14 trillion ecosystem yet to be touched by e-commerce. By the way, let me say that again. $14 trillion of an industry yet to be touched by e-commerce. How many of those are out there are left for Amazon, Alibaba, and Ariba to actually like get involved in? We're 14 trillion. 2 trillion of that gets wasted on bad data. Again, I'm a little unhappy about that. And 95% of our data goes unused. You have to really start knowing the difference between data and critical data. What do we want to use it for? Last night we talked about permits on our way as we walked over, and I would say, we didn't talk about it too much, I was like, to a point, I think that's the end game. For you, because you're an architect really by training, right? For you, I can't take those models that you showed and actually fabricate from any of those. If I had a room full of contractors here and I said, how many of you had a BIM model you could fabricate from or even build from? No one would raise their hand. That should make you unhappy most of the time, that you draw things that will never be built. And you bid out things if you're a GC that will never be bought. And we waste and transactional waste all of this data all of the time. And these are not my slides. These are actually Autodesk's who lent them to me for this. These sawtooth curves, I had no idea what you were going to show. It's the almost exact same slide that you just showed, are like gaps in our process. And I would tell you they're there on purpose, actually. I don't think they're there on accident. And that's the part we have to start thinking about. Why are they there? Why are there these problems? Why are we disconnected? Because we already know that we are disconnected. Again, I borrowed this from some friends at Autodesk. We know that the answers are not being handed from one group to the next group to the next group to the next group, and that we're all standing there with what I would call in New York a dead cat. My neighbor threw a dead cat over the fence, and I'm like, what do I do with this dead cat? And I have to somehow resuscitate this dead cat into my pet, and then I throw another dead cat over to the next guy. So we know that that's happening, and so what happens is that we have inefficiency, we have lack of trust, we have uninformed decisions, and basically everything we have for information is wrong. Again, I didn't make this slide. This is Autodesk's slide. So I appreciate my friends at Autodesk letting me show this to you, because why is it wrong? Because it's locked in the model, and unfortunately, for all of you people on every BIM task force, many of you are only architects, the eye has yet to really become intelligent for building. And so the vision that they had when they originally started talking about connected BIM, and I'm sorry to pick on my architect friends, I'll pick on the contractors next, don't worry, is that the eye never got intelligence. It never got connected. It never had the make information. And it's not your fault, because as an architect, it's impossible for you to know as a human how every system is made, multiplied by every proprietary system that's out there, for you to make the right choices in drawing something in such detail that somebody could actually build from it. So it's not your fault. Even if you wanted to, it's not like the rest of the world works. I can't push a button and search content immediately and have that data schema feed into my drawings where I know all the metadata associated with the choices I'm making, almost like I say when I'm ordering something from Amazon off my phone. Right? Like, we know platforms exist where that can happen, where I set the parameters, I architect the parameters of what I want. And then I see resellers, distributors, and manufacturers' products come up with different value propositions, and I choose them with certainty, and I know they're coming to my house in the United States in 2 days or 1 day, and I actually can track it along the way. And I can even do, open my door if I want to without being there for them to put the package inside. We forget the expected experience of everybody else on this planet. I can order a pizza on my Apple Watch right now from the stage, probably with more technology than most people use on a job site. We use our phone to call somebody else who calls somebody else who calls somebody else to see if $1 million piece of equipment is even showing up that day. My expected experience, who's the youngest person in the room? Raise your hand if you think you are. I'm going to point to you because you're in the front. You, how old are you? 23. The fact that I just said that I could order more off my watch, a pizza off my watch with more technology than you probably order a pizza or a game or do something is crazy. We talked about, right, do you think you have to just use your mouth and your feet in this business. You have to walk over to somebody, you have to tell them what you want because we don't actually have stuff codified in technology for you to order it like you do a game. It's crazy, right? I need you to reverse mentor some of these people and use your expected experience to tell them what you want the world to be like instead of what it's like right now. Because there's only one answer when you ask yourself, why is that actually happening? Does anybody know what the answer is? And if I told you last night, what's the answer? When you're like, why do people do, why can't I order a why can't I order a component off my Apple Watch and know it's going to show up on time? What's the answer to that? Does anybody know? It's not technology. It's money. The answer is money. And by the way, I didn't say this. This was my Harvard Business School professor. He said the answer, Dr. Fruhan, to every question you have as why is that happening in business is money. Yesterday, I sat there till 2:45 till somebody said profit in a conference on business models. Nobody said return on investment until 3 o'clock. I'm throwing it out there. So what did I do last night? I thought, man, I'm going to ask some hard questions tomorrow that I want you to ask yourself. Take a breath. We're going to have to be a little interactive right now. Ask yourself, when we said, why are people not innovating? And why are we fixing all these problems? And why isn't somebody doing that? I would ask yourself, do you really want to innovate if it removes something that you get paid for? Raise your hand. Would you innovate for something if it removed what you get paid for as an architect? I know you would, because he's in futures. You would. Somebody was telling me at the bar that there was a butcher that's very big in this area. Who was telling me that story? And they sold meat products, and they realized that the world is changing, so they started looking into vegetarian options for the meats they make. And somebody in that room, I guarantee, said, why would we do that? No one's going to buy meat ever again. And they did it anyway. And so now they have the largest vegetarian options, and they're still selling a ton of meat. It's like we sell meat, and we're like, let's not talk about vegans ever. We never want people to become vegetarians because we sell meat. Do you agree with that? Does anybody disagree with that? Because I love challenges and questions. If you say BS, Amy, you already said a curse word, so I'm not the first dirty girl to get up and say something bad today. But does anyone disagree with me? That's right. You're like, I feel like, I have a friend, he actually quit his job. I won't tell what company, a company you all know. He designed an app, actually, that eliminated 16,000 hours in switching stations as they were developing and designing switching stations. And he said, hey, I made this configurator. It's going to remove 16,000 hours from us having to design these. And his boss said, why would I want that? Now I can't charge for those 16,000 hours. You just ruined, like, us making money. And he said, I quit. And he's like, I can't work here anymore. Because he decided he's, innovating himself out of a job, and that's a good thing, but his boss didn't think so. So these silos that we talk about, are they there because we keep them there? I think they are. I think you make a lot of money by the fact that there's misinformation. If you're a contractor, I'll pick on my contractors. They make a lot of money on the lack of information and gaps of information and misinformation that's out there from somebody who squinted their eyes and drew a wall. Do they want that silo there or not? Do they make money when there's a mistake on the drawings or not? They do, and they're trained to actually look for inefficiencies so that they can actually figure out how they're going to make money. Because, and I'm sorry, I have this. Where's Olivier? I didn't know. I don't read your stuff. I apologize. But like you talked about this yesterday, I agree with you. So if it was 2020 when you said it, I'll give you the credit. I think my contractors are just trying not to lose. Every innovation we talked about on stage yesterday was people using technology so that we don't lose. If you look at what people are using AI for in oil and gas, in pharmaceuticals, they're looking for exploration, they're looking for faster drugs, they want to do things quicker. We are looking just not to lose our shirts. Most contractors make 2.5% to 3% on volume. I could make more money if I put my money in a bond. Like, that is crap. Most architects are trying to protect their 6%, 5.5%, 8%, maybe if you're like super good. Like, we're just trying not to lose it. If you win a job, you're like, ugh, I did something wrong. Like, this is bad. And you could literally, it's an infinite downside on one job and almost no upside just to protect your upside. And now I'm going to say something that hopefully makes you think a little bit like, what does IP actually look like in the future? And sorry, this is the part that drives me a little bit insane. I used to have patents. I bought a couple companies, they own patents, and I put a lot of money into patents. And then I was like, man, these are worthless. Like, somebody's just going to change one thing, and I have to defend these patents. And I decided, and I'm going to tell what I said this morning, I could give you the recipe to my mom's lasagna. Your mom can't make it like my mom. I promise you, she is not going to pick out the tomatoes in New York when my mom smelled the tomatoes. It's like, there's never, I could literally hand you the recipe, and it will not taste like my mom's. So what's going on in other places, if you're in the car business or if you watch what's going on in Hollywood or if you look at anything, they don't really need any of these architects to design a building anymore because there's so much public information on their style that AI could actually do it. We don't need writers anymore to do the Jerry Seinfeld episodes because it's so much out there that it can pick up and learn how to write those episodes. If you don't believe me, even the car companies are looking at their contracts with their designers and developers because they can use AI now to do 1 million different types of cars in that style of that particular car designer. And what does he own now? If the model is learning from him as he or she is designing that car, Do I own that anymore? Does the car company I work for now own my intellectual property? Can they just keep doing cars based on when I worked for them for 2 years and all the things I came up with? Like, we have to stop being so precious about this IP. Every architect just threw up in their mouth when I said that, right? We have to stop, and by the way, the product manufacturers, anyone here building product manufacturer? You as well. I used to, by the way, have to give we talked about drawings the other day. I used to have to give my kids, like my firstborn, I only have one, but I used to have to promise her in order to get the Marriott drawings for any hotel that I could see. I had to literally give them my DNA, my thumbprint, just to get a set of drawings of what a Marriott building looked like. Do you remember those times? I'm old. Now you can get it anywhere. We have to stop being so precious. The contracts are going to change. The laws are going to change. It's going to be based on how wonderful you are and how great your people are and how great you can be, and your culture is going to make you succeed, whether or not you can figure that out. 80% of success is based on your soft skills right now if you're a leader, and you should know that. So a quick pulse check, because I have a few more minutes. By the way, I'm going to pause right there. Does anybody disagree with anything I said? Feel free. I always say I can change my mind, and if you tell me I'm wrong, at least I know what right looks like. The recipe to lasagna is real good. I told you I'm from New York, so we know pizza, and we know lasagna. So I'm going to do a quick pulse check, because I do like those first concrete steps of action. So I've shown you hopefully a vision. Is anybody more dissatisfied now than when we started this morning? Yes. How about, is anyone more aspirational today? Does anyone feel inspired? I think we had that conversation last night. In the United States, we're a little bit down right now with what's going on in politics, and it's because we're sort of eating ourselves from the inside, because we have nothing really aspirational anymore in our lives to look at. We've been to space, we've done some things. I'm like, what is next? Instead, we've sort of turned on each other. It's true. All right, so let's do a little bit of a pulse check. So we talk about industrialized construction, and for those of you who don't know, I've owned several construction companies that did this. I'm not a big fan of boxes stacked on boxes. The volumetric mods. If you're from the government and you think modular is going to solve your housing crisis, I'm so sorry. Your housing situation cannot be solved by anything singularly, and certainly not the modular world. So, however, I look at industrialized construction differently, and it's really a continuum of pieces and parts and assemblies and manufactured products and things like that. Yes, all the way up through volumetric boxes, which have their place as long as you put some intelligence in them, and they're expensive because you don't want to ship very expensive boxes with a lot of air in them. But if you look at this is actually from a conference where 1,300 people come in the United States. It's called Advancing Prefab. That's not lost on me based on the question. But we have 1,300 guests there, and we did a little live research on stage. And we said, how much are you doing in industrialized construction? Because people think, if you look at all the industry reports, it's 3%, 1%, 5%. I call BS on that. I can't look at any building in any city and know that the mechanical, electrical, plumbing services systems didn't come from a fabrication shop. I know that a lot of those already come from manufacturers, pieces and parts, like generators and window systems and that kind of thing. So if you really think about it, everybody is really doing a lot more in prefabrication than you know. It's just we don't have great marketing when you look behind the scenes. So people are doing it, and all around the world we do single trade, multi-trade. People are doing the most complex buildings are actually the ones that benefit the most. All around the world, I'm the only weird girl in the middle of the night that looks at pictures, and it's prefab in the middle of the night. But why do people not productize their things? Why is it that your thing is just a box? Why is it that things are just squint your eyes, looks like a building, and people have not productized their process yet? Well, one is there's no digitally connected marketplace. Why have a product if there's no place to sell it? That makes sense, right? Now that I said it? Okay, the other part is most people don't know what they make, so we don't even have technology to go back and look at the 1,000 skids I just made, so you can tell me, I really only need to make 3, small, medium, and large. We don't have that either. So we don't have a marketplace. There are many marketplaces popping up, by the way. If you haven't seen Cope AI, and you haven't seen there was one here called Modularize, Building Connected, lots of little mini marketplaces, but when you're in Revit, you can't, I'm in Amazon and look for something, search real-time content, and find something and pull it down with a data schema that's usable, where, no offense, any architect can't stretch it and make it unmanufacturable. So you can't make a duck a dog. So, and then we ask people, what about you for automation? What are you doing in your shops? And this is mostly mechanical, electrical, plumbing contractors in the United States, and people are we're all in. We have digitized some stuff, but sometimes it's just my physical. By the way, productization is not just for the physical, it's for the digital process as well. It's if you can do it over and over again, you have to productize your actions. So, and then we said, do you think you're a manufacturer? And sadly, most people in the construction business, shocker, are not. So we have to teach them potentially how to be more like a manufacturer, but the guys that win are actually the manufacturers first, and they make larger and larger assemblies as my subcontractors make more complex assemblies. And we said, like, hey, do you track embodied carbon in the United States? By the way, most of these people are from, they said yes. Most people in Europe are shocked by that. And I was really shocked that they do it really because 17% said it helps us win work. And I was like, great. So I'm almost out of time, but I'm almost done. This is really shocking. They said, what does your business look like in 5 years? And if you look at that, a third of the room said it looks unrecognizable, basically. It'll be completely different and revamped. That's a good thing. Those people are listening, and most people are doing that because they are starting to think of, like, what does a data strategy actually look like? Because unlike, and this is Autodesk, by the way, when we think that the model is the center of the universe, we're realizing now that data is actually the center of the universe, and they're moving from files over at Autodesk and other places into more granular data. So you may see, and this is not an advertisement for them, but I think it's interesting, and I'll leave you with this. If you don't know why you should productize things or start understanding why you should have some sort of configuration to what you do, it's because there was no reason for it before. And so in Forma these days, if you look at it for test fits, there's going to be a bunch of APIs that are going to come up, and they look like something called the AEC data model for properties. You can read and write properties to Revit by the end of the year very easily. There'll be parameters. There'll be some stuff contextually about catalog with Unify that they just bought. And if you haven't looked into the Datum 360 data backbone stuff, so that we can actually have metadata associated with products, and I can configure them and still have them in my drawings, so I can look at things like this, I will tell you that these things weren't in the right places and the stars were not aligned for you to change your business model, but they are now, and so it's on you now. I feel like you're informed, and so if you want more information, this is where you can reach me. And I think I've just about hit my 20 minutes, so I will be here for questions afterwards. So thank you very much for today.